Okay, we're going to start class in about 1 minute. So if you're planning on staying for class, we're about 1 minute away. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started this morning. We have a small group, but that is okay. Small but mighty group. And if you don't know me, let me introduce myself really quickly to you. My name is Laura Morrow, and I know most of you in this room, and I know most of you know who I am for various reasons. But I wanted to thank everybody for being here this morning. As we begin, let me stop and pray just quickly, and then I will let you know what we're going to be talking about within the perspective of Portal this morning. So join me in prayer real quick. Dear Lord, just thank you so much for today. Thank you for the sunshine outside. Thank you for the opportunity to pause and worship you first, and then pause and think about the ways that you have created and allowed us to go through portals. Whether we wanted to or not, you've allowed us to go through things that change us to reflect you, to share your glory, and for you to turn good in even unexpected places. And I just thank you so much for that. I pray that you would just be the words that come out of my mouth this morning, dear Lord. Whenever I'm preparing to speak, I always want to leave room for you to say something that I hadn't planned on saying, and I invite you to that this morning as well. And I just pray that you would be with each of us as we're here today, as we're seeking to know you and to recognize more and more how you're working in our lives so that we can give you glory in all things. In Jesus' name, amen. So on December 20th, of 2018, I woke up that morning with a full day. I had a relatively new puppy that was getting his last puppy shots. So I went to the vet. I was going to be a little bit late to work. So I went to the vet my first thing of the morning. And then I went down to work, and I had some grading to do because I had just wrapped up a semester of teaching. Many of you know, but I do teach at the college level. I have taught at the college level full time since 2004, and have a PhD in organizational behavior, which is just like the people side of business. So personality, leadership, motivation. My dissertation was in stress, workplace stress, which is a little bit ironic given what we're going to talk about the rest of today. But that's kind of what I did. So I was wrapping up some administrative tasks that day, and I had one more day until Christmas break. But one thing I was expecting was a call from my doctor. We had some hints that perhaps some things were a little strange. We thought I had an infection, but we weren't sure. And hopefully I was going to hear something that day from the doctor. It was a very cold, rainy day. I was down right at Spaghetti Junction at work. I did have my puppy at work with me, which was really a blessing in hindsight. He was with me that day after the vet. I was able to take him in. We didn't have hardly anybody was on campus, so I was able to take him in. And a friend was in my office when I got a text from my primary care doctor, who happened to be my friend, which is a total other God story before this even ever happened. So I got a text from Katie, and she said, "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm at work." "At home or on campus?" "On campus." "Can you meet me for coffee? Where's the closest Starbucks?" And the friend that was standing in my office, I looked at her and I said, "Ann, I have to go. I have cancer. I know I have cancer." Because I knew my friend well enough to know if it wasn't cancer, she would have just texted me and said, "Hey, everything's fine. You have some mastitis. I'm calling in a prescription." But she was in Gainesville, Georgia, was supposed to be in clinic on a Thursday afternoon, and she was like, "What's closer, Perimeter or, and name somewhere else I can't even remember. And I said, well, actually, if you just want to go, meet me at the Starbucks in Swanee, right off the interstate. That'll be closer to you, and it'll be closer for me getting home. So knowing that she was going to be driving, leaving campus, I knew something was wrong that afternoon. And many of you know the story of that day, but if you don't, I'll catch you up very quickly. When you're going to expect to hear those words, there's several things that can happen. I texted Mark, my husband, and I said, I'm going to meet Katie, and he said, news? And I said, well, I think it's cancer. She would have told me over text, but I'll let you know as soon as I know. He was at work. I drove, and I called a friend on the way, and she said, why don't you tell who's with you? And I said, Champ, my dog. She said, why don't you tell Champ everything you know to be true about God? Everything you know to be true about God. And so on the way, I was blasting. Mark, what song is it that I was blasting that day? I can't remember at the moment. It's the one that Stephen always makes me cry when he sings it. But anyway, now I know why, because it was kind of my anthem, like I'll pass through the waters, whatever kind of song. So I blasted that as loud as I could. And I started off with maybe not so much of a holy song, but that wasn't cutting it. So I had to switch over to a holy song. And then I was like, Champ, buddy. Here's the deal. I need you to know that we're about to get some news that's not going to be good. And I want you to know that no matter what, God's awesome, and he's never going to leave us, and he's going to take care of me, and you're going to always be taken care of, and it's going to be okay even if it's not. And I don't remember what else I told him, but pretty much I just told him that for 40 minutes, over and over and over. And then we got to Starbucks, and I sat in the parking lot, and I waited for her to show up. And I got in her car, and I opened the door and jumped in, and I said, and it was pouring down rain and freezing cold, and I said, I have cancer, don't I? And she just started bawling, and she said, you do. Let's FaceTime Mark. So we called her FaceTime Mark, and she told us the details, most of which I don't remember other than it's super fast growing. 8 weeks before, I did not have anything I had a clear mammogram, honestly, 8 weeks before. And I had a tumor the size of a grapefruit that day. So in 8 weeks, it was that fast. So we knew that. I was like, well, is it inflammatory breast cancer? I don't know. We don't know yet. We have more testing to be done. You're going to meet with an oncologist. So that was December 20th of 2018. Today, I'm happy to tell you that I'm 2.5 years, no evidence of disease, which is awesome. And I am 25 cycles in to a clinical trial of seeing if stage 4 maintenance chemo drugs help prevent the reoccurrence of cancer. So it's not over. I'm still on 2 chemos a day, actually, but I still have a port. I still go to appointments every 8 and 12 weeks for various doctor's appointments. My doctor is not willing to take my port out because of how at risk I am for cancer reoccurrence. But I'm doing everything I can that we know of in the scientific world to prevent this cancer from coming back and taking my life. So we have every reason to think it's over, but we don't know, right? So when Don called and asked me, hey, would you kind of tell your story of cancer from the perspective of being a portal? Because we've talked enough to know over the last few years that he knew that I kind of treated cancer as this black box of something that I was significantly changed by, and I knew I wasn't going to come out the same person I went in as, right? And so I was thinking about this, and I had a little image in my head when he asked me. The minute he asked me, I had an image in my head of kind of what this process looks like, and I've drawn it out, and I'm going to save it for the end to kind of show you. But the thing that kept popping into my mind are there are portals, and then there are portals, right? There are the portals that happen to us all the time. It could be a phone call. It could be we wake up from a nap. It could be we have a hard meeting, and it's a terrible meeting, and we leave that meeting a little bit different. And then there are those portals that change your life significantly and profoundly, and it is impossible to ever be the same. One of the things that I've learned from the experience of cancer is how the ripple effect that that diagnosis and the treatment has in every aspect of your life afterwards. Whether it's financial, whether it's your ability to work, whether it's health, whatever it is, even for healthy people that seem to be okay afterwards, everything you look around and there's something that's been devastated by it in every area you look. So to me, that's kind of what I experienced. And so the other thing he asked me was, okay, I also want you to kind of pick a character in the Bible of somebody who went through a portal that provided you some comfort or provided you a blessing as you were thinking about this. And honestly, that was really tough for me. So I was thinking, okay, maybe Jonah and the whale, because, going through cancer experience, maybe like being in the belly of a whale for a little bit. And I was like, well, no, that doesn't really. So I kind of had these little mini things. I was like, well, maybe Esther, because such a time as this. And no, I wasn't really living in a castle with a king. So no, I was living in a castle with a king, but, very different. And so, yeah, I was thinking about all these things. And then I realized, and it hit me, and when I say this, I want to be very clear that I don't want to make a connection that makes me feel like, well, let me tell you what it is first, and then I'll be clear about my disclaimer. I started thinking about, the portal moment of Scripture that I think there's some significances in the way I found out, in the way I reacted, was when Mary found out she was pregnant with Jesus. Now, I understand, and I am not saying that my cancer experience was equivalent to bringing the Savior of the world into the world, okay? So please do not misunderstand that. But what I realized really quickly was, first thing that happened is out of the blue, kind of this angel appears. Well, it was pretty out of the blue when I started realizing something bad is going to happen. So it wasn't an expected thing. It wasn't something that ran in my family. It wasn't something that we were like, one day I'll have cancer kind of thing. It was a boom, your life has changed, it's different. The other thing that I realized really quickly is Mary did not know what we know about her story. So the day that angel came, the risk was huge for her life to be destroyed, for her life to be over. You have a single woman who everything was going well, and then she had just gotten engaged, like all this fun stuff was happening. We were 5 years married. I had just gotten a new job a couple months before. We had a lot of hope that maybe it was a really good fit. Things were going well. And then all of a sudden, you get some news that threatens everything about your life, which is what happened to Mary. The other thing that was kind of interesting is my time frame. I was diagnosed on the 20th of December. I finished my last active cancer treatment with a surgery on August 22nd. That's 36 weeks. About the time of a pregnancy, right? So a 9-month experience of carrying, this holy moment. For her, it was a holy person, right? Jesus. For me, it was this holy moment of 9 months of waking up every single day knowing this could go either way. This could be something that I am healed from, or this could be something that takes me, and we don't know, right? So Mary didn't know the end of the story. The time frame was similar. The news was terrible. It could have been terrible. And then her response was, I'm the Lord's servant. May it be to me as you have said. That willing acceptance. I don't know why, but my first words out of my mouth when she told me you have cancer is, all right, let's do it. Let's do it. We're going to do this. I'm going to make the most of this experience. We're going to fight. I'm going to try to figure out. And I don't know why God gave me that response, but he did, and I'm honored and humbled by it. I'm grateful for it. I really, truly believe it changed my experience and trajectory of my cancer experience. I don't know if I would still be here if I didn't do it. I don't know that, but I know it changed how I experienced because I walked in with this immediate willingness of acceptance of, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And never once did I ask the question, why me? Why do I have to go through this? I did a lot of things wrong. I complained a lot. I will not be one of those people that at my funeral people will be like, one thing about that Laura Morrow is she never complained. I complain all the time. I'm just going to go ahead and confess that to the church right now. I complain a lot. I still complain a lot. My back hurts. My feet hurt. I'm tired. I complain a lot. But I will tell you one thing I didn't question was why me? The thing that I ask God is, why do I get the chance to serve you in this way? Why do I get the honor of being able to see the behind the scenes of my cancer journey? And so what I want to share with you a little bit today are some of those mini portals within the portal. Because I'm not the same Laura that started cancer. The Laura that started cancer was the Laura that taught the last Bible class I taught when I taught the story of Mary and Martha. I was Martha. I was the running around, doing everything for everybody, forgetting that I was in the presence of God because I was getting it done, checking the boxes, doing all the lists. I was burning the candle at both ends. That was me. I still have a tendency towards that, but it's a lot easier for me now to sit down. I was a stepmom of 2 kids, still a stepmom of 2 kids. They don't have to remind me, hey, it's okay if you sit down anymore. Because God set me down for 9 months, right? So let me tell you about some of the things that have come out the back end. One is that view of self, right? And a mini portal that I experienced was on Facebook. How many of us have gotten sucked into social media a time or two? Well, one day on Facebook, I have to tell you, the cancer that I have is called inflammatory breast cancer, and it's a pretty rare, but probably less rare than we think because it's misdiagnosed often. But it's a rare sudden onset stage 3, so there's not a lot known about it yet. So there's no way so far to catch it any earlier than it's already spread to your lymph nodes. And there's basically one woman in Texas who's a patient at MD Anderson, who's 19 years, no evidence of disease, who is single-handedly spreading the word about this rare type of breast cancer that for most people is terminal. And I watch what she posts, and I look at it, and I kind of soak it all in, and I try to learn, and I would love to help her spread the word about this particular type of cancer. But one day, and it was not too far out of my surgery. So my treatment plan was kind of 3 parts. It was 16 rounds of chemo, surgery, and then radiation. And then I had a second surgery afterwards for more preventative than anything else. And so she posted a book one day, and it was called Much Loved. And I think you can see it, but this is a ratty teddy bear. And if you followed my journey, you may have seen this post, but it was in the summer of 2019. And here's a ratty teddy bear. And this is a book of photographed pictures, and some of them are quite disturbing, of people's loveys, little kids' loveys, and how worn and, picture the Velveteen Rabbit, right? And so how loved and worn, and the effects of being loved so much. This one used to be a giraffe, and he's now a giraffe head with a tail in a little bit of a body. But so she talked about this book, and she talked about how a lot of times, when you're going through a cancer experience, your body gets beat up. You have scars you didn't have before. You have things that you now have that you, like in my port. I've gotten 7 tattoos since I got my cancer journey. I bet you all wouldn't know that. When you're in radiation, you get tattoos to align yourself on the table. You get 2 little dots, tattoos. And I have lymphedema, so I had to measure the same place all the time. And I was like, hey, those dots that you put right here on my sides, can you put them up my arm so I know where I'm measuring and know that I'm measuring the same spot? So I have little blue dots all the way up my arm now that I used to not have because they're a tool for me, but they're also a reminder of my body doesn't work the way it used to, right? And so, so in moments where, you know, you're going through something traumatic, you feel a little bit like this teddy bear. And so this was my favorite possession as a small child. This was my blue flannel blanket. I know that's very hard to tell, but it's almost killed me in my more recent years. So I stopped sleeping with it after I had a master's degree, but before when I started traveling for work and they opened up suitcases sometimes, I was like, maybe I should stop traveling with this because if my coworkers saw Blanky, that might be a little bit embarrassing, right? But I will tell you, one of the things that has changed me profoundly since cancer is my love of what my body is capable of doing. It's amazing. It's the weirdest it's ever looked in my whole life, but it's amazing. The poison that I gave it, and 2 weeks later I showed up to give it again, and it rebounded back every single time for me and never failed me one time. That's huge. Although it feels and looks a lot like this raggedy blankie. And I feel a lot older than the 44 years I'll be in 2 months or 3 months, right? So that was one thing. So that was an example of a way that myself has changed. The way I treat myself, the way I look at myself, the confidence that I have in myself has changed because of this portal of cancer. The next one is the way I look at others. And I don't have a thing to show you for that, but I have a verse to read for that. And it's a verse that I wrote on our living room wall with a Sharpie. Our living room wall above our couch is Sharpie, all the blessings of cancer, because I knew I was going to have to look at them all the time. So I was like, hey, I didn't even ask for permission. I was just like, hey, sorry, we're going to Sharpie up our living room wall, and I hope we can paint over it if we ever move, because probably not going to be a selling feature of the house. But anyway, Philippians 2, and I'm going to replace that with since, okay? Since you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy be complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. And that's Philippians 2, 1 and 2. And what we quickly realized were the ways that people showed up for us. The texts that I got, the meals that we were sent, the gift cards that we were sent, the ways people showed up for us helped me to understand how to show up better for other people later. Another thing that happened is the cards that people sent us. And I almost, for the first 6 months, I bet there was maybe one time I went to the mailbox and there wasn't an encouragement card in the mailbox. And walking to the mailbox was sometimes a big deal. I mean, sometimes that was the whole goal of the day, was to walk to the mailbox and back. And having something in there to encourage me reminded me of the importance of doing that for somebody later on, right? And then the last thing, so how it changed my view of other people. Oh, and I want to mention about that too. I do teach, and I'm still teaching. I'm only teaching part-time now. But the way I interact with my students, and I used to have really hardcore policies in my class, like no late work and and it's going to be good for you. And I was pretty militant in the way that I ran my class. And now it's like, you want an extension? Absolutely. And if you tell me in advance, there's no penalty. Just let me know. Keep me updated. This is a place, and if I ever have a student that I realize, hey, something may be really stressful to you, take a minute. How can I encourage you? My class, no matter what the class is, now I do teach about how to be a member of a community within a company, but it's always including some, okay, what are you going to do to take care of yourself? How are you going to model for your employees that it's important for them to take care of themselves? Do you take your vacation? Do you leave on time? Because if you tell them they can and you don't, they probably won't, right? So how do you model that? And so the whole way I approach my classes is different because of the way I experienced cancer and because of the way people helped me to understand how to take better care of myself. And then the third way I think that our relationship changes and my outlook changes is through opportunity. And I have a funny story about that. So I was sent this little frog in February of 2019 during my chemo experience, and it has a little tag on it that says, "Fully rely on God." And I was like, that's really cute. And so it just sat in our living room high enough for the puppy that we had gotten prior to cancer. That's not good timing, by the way, a puppy. Anyway, there were days where I'm like, we're just going to have to deal with whatever you just ate when Mark comes home. But fully rely on God. And it sat on the shelf high enough where Champ couldn't get it. And so that was in February. In August, I was really trying to figure out, am I going back to work? Am I not going back to work? I don't know. We can't afford it if I don't. What do I do? How do I do all this? I was praying about it and thinking about it, and we were trying to make that decision. And it was about 2 a.m., and some of you have heard this story. But it was about 2 a.m., and I felt something on my forehead in our house. Not out camping, but in our house, and our room is upstairs, and I felt something on my forehead, and I turned on the light, and I was like, hey, something was on my head, so I'm going to turn on the light and figure out what it was. And like that calmly. And I was like, oh, yep, there's a frog. There is a frog, a tree frog, that was attached to my bedside table, like completely attached to my bedside table that had been on my head. And I was like, Mark, there it is. It's a tree frog. It's on my head. Like that calm. And then he was like, he got up and got it and took it outside and released it to the wild and came upstairs. And I was giggling. Like I could not keep it together. I was laughing. And this is like 2 a.m. And he was like, I do not know where your calm and peace came from, but it must have come from the same place that frog came from. And I was like, well, I bet you're right, and then we both went to sleep. Well, the next day, I was kind of doing a prayer walk of, okay, God, what are we doing? I don't know if I can go back to that place. I don't know if I can go back to work, but I know we can't afford it if I don't. And I don't know what to do. And as I was walking back home, he said, you got a gift. You got a gift in February. It was a frog. I brought you another one last night to remind you. What did it say? Fully rely on God. Fully rely on God. And so I did what every normal person would do as I went back to work. Because I'm still learning. I didn't totally trust. Several panic attacks, a month of FMLA to deal with anxiety, and 6 more months of close to hell later, I finally got brave enough to fully rely on God. And you know what? God is starting, and that was in February of this past year, 2021, but I'm starting to put together a new business. So I'm building a business to help people with cancer, to help people encourage people with cancer. And so opportunities are starting to pop up, and connections are starting to be made, and I'm starting to meet people, and they're saying things like, hey, I don't know why, but I think you need to meet so-and-so. So I call so-and-so, and I'm like, hey, I'm not sure why I'm supposed to call you, but I was told I needed to call you. And then they're like, oh, well, I don't know either, but let's just talk. Let's just share our stories, and let's figure out if there's a way or an opportunity for us to collaborate. And one of those turned into an after breast cancer program that I'm able to do virtually with the Nashville Middle Tennessee YMCA that starts on Tuesday. And basically they're able to do it for about 10 people a year. Well, I teach online. I know how to build programs. Maybe we can figure out, maybe, who knows? We're still in it, right? Maybe we can figure out ways to, instead of 10 people a year, what if we can do it for 100 people a year? What if we can scale it up? What if we could raise money? What if I could start it in Atlanta? So there's all kinds of opportunity when you fully rely on God, right? And I will tell you, this is another thing that I complain about. So I'm just keeping it real, confessing that to the church. I still struggle. I'm not totally out of my portal. And that's the thing that I wanted to remind us today. So sometimes I forget that when we're faced with a portal and we see other people's portals and we see other people's portals after they're over, we forget that they didn't know what was going to be involved, right? It's kind of like a black box. You know the start of it. You know I've just been hit with a portal. I don't know when it's going to end. We don't know the time boundaries. We don't know the intensity and the what ifs. We don't know. And so it's when, and this is my little image. So here's the person right before, and you go in this black box that has lots of colors and lots of things, lots of positive things that could happen, lots of ways God shows up for you in the portal, right? But you don't know how that's really going to unroll and unravel, when it's going to end, until it's over. But one thing's true, you're going to be different when you come out the other side. You're going to have pieces and reflections of the God glory that happened inside on the backside. You're going to have the scars. You're going to have the wears and tears of that well-loved teddy bear or blankie, not the beaten up person, right? And so to understand and remember that we're still waiting for it to unfold. We're still waiting. It's still unrolling. We're not done. None of us are done until it's over. And so one of the things that has been a really helpful thing for me is IBC, inflammatory breast cancer. The motto is hope always. Hope always. Because Terry Lynn Arnold that I told you about, she was given weeks to live, and she's been no evidence of disease for 19 years. So what are you going through? How do you see it now? How could you see it if you remember it's not the end of the story? How might God be involved? And how might God be involved? None of the stories I told you about happened on December 20th. Other than my diagnosis story. Everything else was months, years down the line. How can you gain from this right now? How might this portal impact or bless your future? And what does relying on God look like? Hopefully not a frog jumping on your head in the middle of the night. But thankfully, he's willing to do that when we need it, right? And so hopefully today I just wanted to encourage you just to remember that our stories are still being unrolled. They're still being unfolded. No matter how bad the news is, it's not over. And honestly, I'm waiting on some blood work right now. It's routine. We do it every 8 weeks. But that blood work is the blood work that is the most likely to give me bad news. If there's going to be something to give me bad news, I'm going to get it tomorrow. So every 8 weeks, I show up for blood work, and I wait to see, and I have to go to bed tonight knowing that if that blood work comes back bad tomorrow and I have to go back and I have to get a scan, it's still okay, and it's still not over, and God's still not done. Dear God, thank you so much for who you are, who you've called us to be. Thank you for the ways that you show up in our lives, and you take the messes of this world and you keep unrolling them and unfolding them with beauty and glory and good. Thank you for being a God that works for good in all things and for equipping us to play a role in that good as well, even when we're beat up and torn down and feel like a really well-worn levee. We love you. We love who you've called us to be. And we praise you for who you are. In Jesus' name, amen.